Good afternoon. We are back in conversation with His Eminence Archbishop Lazar Puhalo. Good afternoon, Your Eminence.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be talking to you again.
It's my pleasure. And today is a very current issue from across the border. We are here in Canada, in British Columbia, where His Eminence founded and ran the All Saints Orthodox Monastery, the first Orthodox monastery on the west coast of Canada. So, Your Eminence, across the border, the New York Times had an article about the what they call Orthodox church pews are overflowing with converts. So the conversion from other Christian denomination to Orthodoxy that has been spiking lately. And interestingly, these conversions, according to the individuals they quote in this long article, are in large part driven by an appeal to the masculine soul, as the article quotes. Another quote claims that Protestant and Catholic churches have a very feminine atmosphere of all places. How do you understand this motivation for converting to Orthodoxy based on masculinity?
That's a very strange phenomenon because talking about masculine soul, but in the heavenly kingdom there's neither male nor female, but your soul has no gender. The soul is there is no gender to the soul, because otherwise in the heavenly kingdom there would be male and female. But this is a very strange movement that started in the United States, but it's also directly connected to this very aggressive ultra-right-wing white nationalism. And I'd like to look at part of what's really behind this movement of white nationalism and this toxic masculinity. And unfortunately, these sorts of semi-converts, not converting because of the faith, not converting because of the belief, not converting because of the tradition and the doctrine, but converting because they're terrified about their own masculinity. They're frightened of their own masculinity. They doubt their own masculinity, and that's why they're searching. Nobody's really looking at the roots of the problem about this. But let's begin with saying that there's a very dramatic demographic drop, particularly in the white population of the United States. There's a demographic drop also in the Black and Hispanic populations, but not nearly so significant as the drop in the white demographic. There are more white people dying in the United States than being born. Now, what's happening is that in this society, also in Japan, Korea, other countries, especially Korea, there's a definite drop in the younger population, so that both of them are becoming countries of senior citizens. And of course, economically, financially, that's really bad. It's so bad in North Korea that the collapse of North Korea may be even imminent, simply because of the demographic changes, because there are not enough children being born to sustain any kind of economy. But there's something other at the root of all this also. And I want to suggest that everybody is dancing the light fantastic around the real problem. Our world is being absolutely inundated by pseudoestrogens. All plastics, coolants, and even in the power lines, the thing to maintain the temperature of the coolants, these are all pseudoestrogens. Everything made of soya, all meat substitutes that are made of soya, These are all pseudoestrogens. And I suspect that this inundation of the world with pseudoestrogens is feminizing the world. And I noticed that there is an upswing. We don't know for sure, but it seems that there's a massive upswing in people who are transgendered. Usually boys who are consider themselves male to female. And while everybody's howling and shrieking about some kind of moral decline because of it, and because these young men who are converting to Orthodoxy are desperate about the feeling of the loss of their own masculinity, looking for something that will help substantiate their masculinity. But nobody's looking at the possibility that our atmosphere being filled and our food sources being filled with pseudoestrogens might just be a major part of the problem. No one wants to address that particular problem. So if there's an upswing in people who are transgendered, there are more and more people like that. Everybody's thinking it's some kind of moral issue, some kind of people's imagination. That's not true. It's a very real phenomenon. And if we were going to look at the roots of the phenomenon, we'd be looking at the massive inundation of our world with pseudoestrogens, which are dislocating sexual identity. And the men who are fleeing to the Orthodox Church because they're almost hysterical about their own masculinity. They doubt their own masculinity, and they're looking for something that might substantiate it. But there's no such thing as a masculine and feminine soul. The soul is a spiritual energy from God to man. It's the way we live and create spiritually. That's without gender. It's almost blasphemous to say that there's a masculine soul and a feminine soul. There'll be neither masculine nor feminine in the heavenly kingdom. So this has to do with a desperate loss of faith, or a desperate loss of connection with their own masculinity. They doubt and are terrified that they've lost their masculinity, and that's why they're turning toward the Orthodox Church. Now, why do they identify it with something masculine? Because they identify it with Vladimir Putin, that's why. They identify it with Russian militarism. And they think that that is an expression of Orthodoxy. So they completely don't care about the faith, the teachings, the sacred tradition. They only care about this artificial feeling of masculinity that they get. So it's not about the Orthodox faith, and the Orthodox faith is being diluted, undermined by these people who are converting to Orthodoxy because they're terrified and doubting their own masculinity. So they want to find some kind of toxic masculinity as an image that they can cling to. It's the loss of their own personal masculinity and masculine identity that is driving this conversion. Now, the other thing, though, that the demographic collapse in America, particularly more pronouncedly in the white population, is also part of the almost hysterical fear of abortion. People, really all the laws and regulations of anti-abortion movement, of course we Orthodox Christians don't believe in abortion either, but there's a kind of a panic and hysteria about it. And the panic and hysteria is driven by the fact that the demographic collapse, the lack of children to replace the senior population, is more pronounced among the white population than the black or the Hispanic population. I mean, they're experiencing the same demographic drop, but it seems to be more pronounced in the white population. Whether that's true or just illusory is not the question. That's what's perceived. So this whole panic about demographic collapse is driving a great deal of the fear and hysteria in America. In the right-wing America in particular, the white nationalist America. That's why they're so opposed to, say, transgender, because the transgender people are not going to produce children. They're not going to help replace the aging population. The same with the gay population. There's a kind of a hate and fear about the gay population because they're not contributing to the replacement of the aged population with young newborn people. It's about the birth rate more than it is about any moral question. There is a demographic collapse taking place. Korea, Japan are both rapidly aging populations with you need a constant upswing of, you need young people to replace the old people, or you can't sustain even the economy of the nation. You can't sustain the workforce of the nation. You can't have the same kind of consumerism because old people don't buy the same things younger generation does. So this, instead of trying to get it to the roots of the demographic collapse, people are making hysterical moralizations. And a lot of young men, doubting their own masculinity, are converting to the Orthodox Church in search of a masculinity that they absolutely doubt in themselves. But it's sheer blasphemy to say that there's a masculine soul and a feminine soul, because they're spiritual entities, and it has nothing to do with it. It has to do with your spiritual life, your spiritual existence, and your entry into the heavenly kingdom, first of all, if neither male nor female, just as the Apostle Paul says. So the demographic collapse, the refusal to accept climate change as helping to undermine the demography, the total inundation of our world in pseudoestrogens, which absolutely has to have something to do with the collapse in the youth demography, which absolutely has to do with gender questions and gender issues. There's no possible way that cannot have some effect, that cannot be part of the problem. And if there is, I doubt it, but if there is an upswing in people who identify as transgender, I mean, that situation's always existed and always been accepted as perfectly normal in many ancient societies. But if there's an upswing in it, it has to do with the pollution of our air, our atmosphere, our food, and our water sources with pseudoestrogens. These young men who are so frightened about and doubtful about their own masculinity that they're converting to the Orthodox Church evidently because they think Mr. Putin represents the Orthodox world and he appears to be very masculine. You can't, we don't need to labor the issue too much, but at the root of all these problems, it really is our pollution and destruction of the atmosphere and destruction of even food supply that doesn't relate to soya products or something that is pseudoestrogen. The animals are fed these things. Pseudoestrogens are in some of the, at least some of the insecticides and others that are used in farm products. So we're getting it from multiple sources. There's a genuine problem that people refuse to address. And instead of addressing the actual problem, they use toxic moralism, very toxic moralism, almost fascism, moral fascism. And the problem is that much of religion in America is based in fear and hate. Hate will always sell better and raise more money than love. Fear will always sell better and raise more donations than reason. So your whole religious structure in the United States is being based in trying to undermine reason and trying to undermine love, trying to replace love with hate. You go to any church, I'll say, oh, Jesus loves you, God loves you, but here's a list of people you're supposed to hate. You see, America is becoming a nation of hatred and fear. It's pure and simple. The real root problem in the United States is that hate and fear are becoming the religion of the nation. You know, the religion of America has never been Jesus Christ. It's always been the religion of America is America. They worship the state and pretend to worship Jesus Christ, but never obey Jesus Christ or follow any of his teachings. They want to post the 10 Commandments, but would never cross their mind to post the Beatitudes. Because with this toxic masculinity, the Beatitudes, the teachings of Jesus Christ, seem to be a form of weakness. And they want the toxic masculinity of Moses committing genocide against his own father-in-law's tribe, killing men, women, and babies, and reserving only the virgin women to take into sexual bondage, sexual slavery. You want to see the savageness of the extinguishing of the Amorites as something heroic, masculine. Masculinity is, genocide is masculine. War is masculine. Killing people is masculine. Love is feminine. The Beatitudes are too feminine. Love your neighbor as yourself. Oh my God, that's so feminine. And they want to pit Apostle Paul against Jesus Christ, not as amplifying Jesus Christ, but as against Jesus Christ, in opposition to Jesus Christ, because they think Paul is more masculine than Jesus was. They see the teachings of Jesus Christ as feminine, the teachings of Paul, the harshest teachings of Paul, as masculine. They see the genocides in the Old Testament as masculine. And that's what they're seeking. They see Vladimir Putin as the epitome of masculinity, and he's Orthodox, so Orthodoxy must be masculine. After all, we put women down just as much as any other Christian group, so we're more masculine. So that's a part of the problem. And nobody is really looking at the root problem about the demographic collapse around the world. And that demographic collapse is not affecting everyone equally. There are some Muslim countries where the demographic collapse is not taking place. In Europe, the Muslims reproduce tenfold what white people produce, white Europeans produce. So slowly, but Islam is a very masculine religion. So I'm surprised these people became Orthodox and not Muslims. These people who doubt their own masculinity, so they have to seek out some religious source of masculinity, no matter how artificial it is. that Islam can win the war if people don't start realizing why the demographic collapse is taking place. Yeah. So that's those things. I ask people just to think about it. I know some people will shriek and howl and get hysterical because they're too feminine. So the only thing I can say is think about it seriously before you start shrieking and screaming. Think about it very seriously.
Thank you, Your Eminence.